The exhortation for the Amazon Synod was released this week, and a lot of people are celebrating the fact that it didn't include married priests or female deacons, but I'm not celebrating it because it contains a decent bit of paganism. It's not like Humanae Vitae where it actually promoted Catholicism. This still promotes this weird interreligious dialogue and how we can learn from the Amazon, the people of the Amazon and their pagan rituals. And it seemed to include justifications for the Pachamama worship. Taylor Marshall has a good video on it, so I'm not going to get into it today. Instead, I'm going to talk about items in the news this week that people may have overlooked because they might have been busy celebrating or looking into the Amazon Synod document. The first news item is that the Vatican is preparing to appoint a pro-communist archbishop in Hong Kong. If you recall, the Vatican made a deal with China in 2018 in which China had permission to appoint their own bishops. There's a problem there because no government should be able to do that, especially not a communist government. So predictably, the Vatican communist deal has been a disaster, and Cardinal Joseph Zen of Hong Kong, he's 88 years old, he's been an outspoken critic of this deal. In an interview with Catholic News Agency, Cardinal Zen says, "The situation in China is very bad, and the source is not the Pope. The Pope doesn't know much about China, and he may have some sympathy for the communists, because in South America the communists are good guys. They suffer for social justice, but not the Chinese communists. They are persecutors." So I disagree with Cardinal Zen. I know he's trying to make excuses not to criticize the Pope, but how can the Pope not know? He appointed McCarrick to negotiate the Vatican-Chinese deal. How can he not be aware of the Chinese government smashing statues, shutting down churches? The Pope's not in this little bubble where he has no idea what's going on. He meets with the UN leaders. I mean, come on. Later on, Cardinal Zen says, "So in this deal, the Vatican lost everything and got nothing. Parolin, the Secretary of State, he knows very well who the communists are. There's no way to bargain with the communists. You get nothing." In an article written by the Vatican's news agency, it says that the Vatican and China are pursuing the path of dialogue. It said that on Friday evening, representatives from the Vatican and China held a discussion that took place in a cordial atmosphere. They discussed the contacts that have taken place between the two countries, which have developed positively over time. So does the Vatican not care about the persecution of the Chinese Catholics? Further down it says, "Lastly, the parties expressed a desire for greater international cooperation to foster peace in the world, and considerations on intercultural dialogue and human rights were exchanged." Well, that's good they talk about human rights, but why not talk about the horrible human rights violations by the Chinese government? Why not talk about religious persecution? That would be a great place to start rather than promoting this horrible deal with the communist government where the Chinese government appoints their own bishops and requires them to sign a document stating that they pledge loyalty to the communist government of China. So all of that took place, as well as news from Puerto Rico in which Bishop Álvaro Corrada del Rio, he gave his diocese a mandate that because of the flu, they needed to receive communion in the hand. He also banned the sign of peace at Mass, which is a good idea. It should be banned everywhere at all Masses, regardless of the situation. It is optional, so priests should opt not to have it. By this bishop requiring communion in the hand, he uses the excuse of the flu outbreak to further justify his position in deviating from tradition. This is a way to further the agenda of the corruption network, to further de-emphasize the reverent reception of communion. As it turns out, this bishop happens to be a Jesuit. Are you surprised?